Hello and welcome to the program this week. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Days after Russia launched a barrage of missile strikes across Ukraine, knocking out critical infrastructure and power across Kharkiv region, it has now fully been restored. The spokesperson for the regional military administration says the metro in Kharkiv city has reopened, but the trams remain at a standstill. Oleh Shinebov, head of the Kharkiv region military administration, said over the weekend that the power to all customers in the Kharkiv region was expected to be restored in full by the end of the day. He said the city has almost completely been eliminated, the consequences of the enemy attack that took place on March the 9th. He adds the power supply has been restored by 100% for the population in the city, and the power supply to Kharkiv critical infrastructure, including water, utility and sewage treatment plants, have also been restored. Meanwhile, think tank, which is the Institute for the Study of War, says that there has been no confirmed advances by Russian forces in Bakhmut. The report published over the weekend said that despite Russian forces and units from the paramilitary Wagner group launching continuous ground attacks in the city, there is no evidence that they made any progress. The think tank said Ukrainian and Russian sources continue to report heavy fighting in that city, but the Wagner group also said fighters are likely becoming increasingly pinned in urban areas such as the Azov industrial complex, and they're therefore finding it very difficult to make significant advances. The exact type of picture of what is happening in Bakhmut is difficult to establish, but Wagner chief said that his forces were close to the city center. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the Russian forces suffered more than 1,000 dead in less than 1 week of battles near the eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut, the focal point of fighting in the eastern part of Ukraine. Speaking during his usual nightly address, Mr. Zelensky said the Russian forces had also sustained 1,500 sanitary losses, adding that dozens of pieces of enemy equipment were destroyed in the process.
In less than a week, starting from March 6, we managed to kill more than 1,100 enemy soldiers in Bakhmut sector alone. Furthermore, at least 1,500 more enemy sanitary losses, those whose wounds are incompatible with continuing the fight, plus dozens of units of enemy equipment were destroyed, plus more than 10,000 Russian ammunition depots were burned down. Today, I bestowed the title of Hero of Ukraine on soldier Oleksandr Matyevsky, a man that all Ukraine will know, a man who will be forever remembered for his bravery.
The VOA Anna Cherinikova also joins me now from Kyiv. Thank you very much, Anna, for joining us on The World Today.
Good evening.
Hi. Please give us an update on what's been happening in Ukraine in the last 24 hours.
If we look in general at the country and what's happening, especially at the front lines, I can say that in general, Ukraine is living its life as at least trying to living this life which is adapted to the war. And you can feel the war everywhere. You can hear air raid silence everywhere. You can experience missile attacks everywhere. But definitely the main attention is at the front lines, and particularly Donetsk region and the city of Bakhmut, because city of Bakhmut is currently the hottest spot and has been the hottest spot for the past months. What I can say that according to Ukrainian officials, military officials, the fightings continue. Very difficult situation even there, very difficult fightings, very intensive fightings, and Russian forces are trying to proceed and trying to advance to the city center. However, according again to the official information from the Ukrainian authorities, the central part of the city remains under Ukrainian control. President Zelensky yesterday confirmed a huge amount of losses by Russian forces. We hear that Ukrainians' losses are also quite significant. Unfortunately, we don't have exact numbers or information regarding these losses, but definitely both sides have quite a significant numbers, and particularly Wagner Group have well, they are trying to get into the city center. This is probably the main.
Okay. Of course, we already know that power has been fully restored in Kharkiv region after Russian strikes knocked out infrastructure. Before that, how were people coping without electricity before the full restoration of power there?
Not only Kharkiv, but Kharkiv had the worst situation with energy. Also, other areas had some troubles. Kharkiv, was the longest. I should say that people in Ukraine kind of, already know how to live through this, because back in October, back in November, situation was much worse, and outages were for a couple of days in a row. For a couple of months. So I can say that, and actually a lot of civilians are saying when they are asked that actually, well, life is going on, we are just adapting to the conditions we have. Basically, as you can see currently, the footage, the whole city, not only in Kharkiv, but in other cities as well, including Kyiv, you can see a lot of generators out on the streets, especially when the outages are happening. So people are just, again, adapting and use alternative sources of energy in order to cope with outages before the full restoration is implemented. So definitely it's not easy. Definitely it's not something that could be considered normal, but this is something that this is reality, and this is and people just try to use this try not to make these circumstances change their life too much. Probably this is the main.
Now, Anna, I mean, for anyone looking at this whole situation, it looks like there's a tussle concerning Bakhmut. The think tank has said the Russian forces did not make any confirmed advances within Bakhmut. But for the Wagner Group leader has repeatedly said that his forces have taken over the city. What do we see play out here? What is actually happening or playing out as we speak?
Situation is extremely difficult. We have to understand. City is under Ukrainian control according to Ukrainian officials and according to most of international experts. But the main part of the city, let's be clear here. East part of the city is under Russian control at this point of time. So basically the city is kind of divided by the river, but and the central part of the city is on the other side of the river. So Russian forces managed to get to one of the banks, but the other side of the city is under Ukrainian control, and this is the defense line basically. So for the moment we cannot confirm, we do not have confirmed information from any sources that the city was taken by Russian forces, either Wagner Group or other representatives of the Russian military. So, but we definitely see that situation is getting tougher and tougher every day. And according to Mr. Syrsky, who is Ukrainian general and who is responsible for the defense of Bakhmut, the fightings, our fears are getting really harder and harder. And he is saying that for this point of time, so for the moment we're talking right now, Ukrainians keep the defense of the central part, and all the other part behind the central part. But again, situation is changing very quickly, and it might be that in a couple of days we will have some different information. For the moment, this is what we have.
Now, from your point of view, what's the future of Bakhmut looking like, seeing that both parties are interested in this city?
Well, it looks like Ukrainians, and this is actually something that Ukrainian military is not hiding, that Ukrainians are trying to save time, and this battle for Bakhmut is saving time for Ukrainian forces to prepare for upcoming counteroffensive, which was already announced and which is supposed to happen sometime soon, according to, again, to Ukrainian officials. Spring, so 3 months of spring should be the time of this counteroffensive. When it's going to start, so we don't have any dates or any, of course, and any, particular clues of when this counteroffensive might begin, but it looks quite clear that Bakhmut, saves this time for Ukrainian forces to get ready for this counteroffensive, because there are a lot of things to be considered before Ukrainians can start this counteroffensive. This includes training of the military, of the Ukrainian military, which is happening abroad, delivery of the military supplies, military support from the Ukrainian allies, tanks and other military equipment. So this is definitely that Ukrainians will try to keep this battle in Bakhmut for as long as it takes in order to keep this time. And also another thing that also Ukrainian military is highlighting in this case, that Bakhmut, as any part of Ukraine, is territory of Ukraine, and Ukrainian forces will fight for each centimeter of Ukrainian land. But again, strategically, we can see that this is like saving time, and this is not a secret. For Russian forces, it's of course a very strategic place, because Bakhmut, so basically for the moment, Ukrainian forces control this main road from Bakhmut deeper into the Donetsk region and closer to the Kharkiv region. Yeah. And of course, for Russian forces, this is an important point.
Thank you very much. VOA's Anna Chernikova, thank you so much for the update on this Ukraine and Russian issue. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has said that she agreed with President Joe Biden of the United States during a meeting at the White House to have a dialogue concerning incentives to the clean technology industry. She also said the European Union welcomed the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act because it provided more massive investments in the green energy transition. The two leaders met against the backdrop of the European complaints that clean energy subsidies in the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act and others will divert investment away from Europe and then hurt their economies.
Welcome the Inflation Reduction Act because it is a massive investment in the green transition, moving towards a net zero economy. We agreed that we will work on critical raw materials that have been sourced or processed in the European Union, and to give them the access to the American market as if they were sourced in the American market. We agreed on a transparency dialogue concerning the incentives that are given to the clean tech industry. For us, it's important on both sides of the Atlantic to know what kind of incentives are being given to the clean tech industry, to make sure that we join forces to boost the clean tech industry that is crucial and paramount for reaching a circular economy, a net zero economy.
Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine was also a major agenda item on that meeting with U.S. President Joe Biden and the European Commission President. Well, speaking in the Oval Office at the start of that meeting, both Mr. Biden and Ms. Leyen underlined the strength of their partnership, their unified support for Ukraine, and their efforts to hold Russia accountable for its invasion. Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin visited Kyiv for a short one-day visit to meet Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. At a joint press conference, Mr. Zelensky expressed his gratitude to Finland for its military assistance during its 12-month conflict with neighboring Russia. In February this year, Finland said that it will send Ukraine 3 Leopard 2 tanks suitable for mine clearing and provide training for their use.
Hello, how are you doing?
We are living in dark times, but there's also lights of hope. And the hope is that we are united. We have stepped up our support when it comes to sanctions, when it comes to arms support to Ukraine, economical support to Ukraine, humanitarian support to Ukraine. So we are united. We are standing behind our values. And Ukraine is fighting for the European values on a front line.
Sergei Lavrov, that's the Prime Minister, the Russian Foreign Minister, has said the conversation with the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on the sidelines of the G20 foreign ministers meeting in India last week was constructive, but he heard nothing new from the U.S. side. Speaking on a televised interview, Mr. Lavrov said the pair spoke for about 10 minutes and then discussed nuclear arms issues and conflict in Ukraine. It's the first meeting between the pair since Russia sent troops to Ukraine last February.
We spoke constructively without emotions. We shook hands when we met and when we said goodbye. It was a normal conversation. I don't know how well it reflects the understanding by the U.S. of the enormity when they cut off all of the communication channels. But to speak like human beings on the sidelines of some event has never been some kind of a sensation. Everything I heard was a position that has already been expressed and underlined in public many times before. I gave my honest, detailed assessment, especially about the New START treaty, and why we saw it necessary to suspend detailed assessment of the New START treaty, and our fourth step to suspend it was thoroughly given by President Putin in his message to the Federal Assembly. So there's nothing new here either.
Ukrainian armed forces conducted drills near the Belarus border, focusing on training servicemen for offensive actions by imitating real combat conditions. The servicemen trained to clear buildings, overcome obstacles, and storm enemy positions. For Victor Kamet, a 27-year-old serviceman who fought back in 2014, explosions, shots were fired everywhere. You understand what is going on, he says, but you have to pull yourself together and complete the mission. He said the training conditions reminded him of real combat. I'm talking about combat. Some 20,000 soldiers from the 9 countries along the 50 aircraft and 40 vessels are now taking part in the joint Viking winter exercise currently underway in northern Norway. The aim of the exercise is to increase preparedness and capability to conduct large-scale joint operations in challenging weather conditions and climate. Most of the participants come from Norway, and the rest are from Canada, Finland, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, United Kingdom, and the United States. This exercise, which is held every 2 years, is the largest exercise held in Norway this year. Anastasia Veliskochaya has helped Russian forces develop in Ukraine by training sniffer dogs to locate mines, rescue people trapped under rubble, and even take part in assault operations. She says she was training the dogs as a voluntary contribution to the Russian military. Other such efforts have sprung up across the country, supplying everything from camouflage nets to sleeping bags, as conflict, which Moscow cast as its special military operation in Ukraine, has now dragged on for more than 1 year, and Russia's forces have struggled to make headway in the face of determined Ukrainian resistance. But so far, she has sent 9 dogs, and 5 more are expected to be sent soon under a new True Friend initiative, and an additional 3 are being tested to see if they have what it takes to perform the required tasks.